from simonwoods.com. Welcome to Wine FAQ. Question today is, I've got some wine and I want to store it. Where should I keep it? First of all, it depends on how much you've got. If you're buying loads and loads of wine, if you're buying sort of like several cases a year, best thing to do, unless you're in one of these stately country piles that has got masses of storage in the cellar where the butler can look after it, then try and store them with the person you bought them from. Get the cheap stuff sent to you at home so you've got something to drink every day. But a normal wine merchant in the UK will charge you something like, I think it's about 10 quid per case per year for storage, and it means there are two. Well, first of all, it means it's in pretty much ideal conditions. We'll get onto those in a moment. And secondly, this reduces what I call the 2 a.m. factor. And the 2 a.m. factor is, I'm sure I'm not alone in this. You've got friends around, and you've had a nice dinner, and it's getting very late. In fact, it's got to 2 o'clock, and you think, oh, is it time to go? And someone says, no, shall we have another bottle of wine? And you think, okay. So you trot to where you keep your wine, and there's these bottles here that you've been intending to keep for your son, stroke daughter, stroke godson, stroke dog, stroke whatever, for some celebration, and you end up pulling the corks slightly earlier than you should have done. Good reason to keep them off site. If you can't do that, or you just want to have a decent store of wine at home, and you haven't got a cellar, and most modern houses today are not really built with wine cellars, few options. If you've got a big enough house, you can get a big hole dug in your kitchen floor. It doesn't work in an apartment because they won't like it in the flat below. But and install what's called a spiral cellar, a spiral staircase, and it's like a staircase that winds down, and as you go around, there are little bins in the wall into which you can shove your bottles. They work pretty well, but you need a big house and you need a big checkbook in order to get them. Slightly more affordable, you can get wine fridges. You've got a regular fridge that keeps things at a certain temperature. Well, you can buy wine fridge. You can set the temperature and say, right, it needs to be at this temperature. And you can say with some of the smarter ones, I want these kept at this temperature, these kept at another temperature. So it could be wines to drink soon and wines to keep for a bit longer at different temperatures. But if you don't want to do that, fear not. There are still some makeshift solutions. Wine to store it well. Well, think about a cellar. What a cellar has got. It's cool, it's quiet, it's reasonably constant in temperature, and not much vibration. So try and emulate those conditions where you keep your wine, which means that if you've got one of those smart kitchens where you get your units in and there's a gap there, and you think, oh, what should we put in there? Shall I put a wine rack in? Let's put it in next to the Arga, the worst place you can store your wine. The temperature goes up, the temperature goes down, there's lots of light, people are pulling the bottles out going, oh, what's that, and shoving it back in again. Keep your wine out of the kitchen, if at all possible, unless you've got one of these special fridges. So where do you keep them? Well, a few suggestions. If you've got an old fireplace, what you can do is fill them up with bits of plumber's tubing, and sort of stack them up, and then put wine in all the tubes, and then find something to cover it up. And as long as there isn't a radiator next to it, because wine doesn't like heat. And so ideally keep it somewhere in the coolest bit of the house, providing the temperature isn't going to get too cool. If it gets too cool, well, I'll tell you my Oz Clarke story. Oz Clarke used to store quite a lot of his wine with a friend of his who had a stately pile somewhere complete with cellar. Unfortunately, this friend and his wife split up. I think the wife got the house and the husband got the boot, and also had to move his wine out. Well, this guy moved it out for him into one of these railway sheds, railway carriages in the middle of a field, which had loads of hay in, which should provide ideal insulation. And it did for a short time, but then they had a really cool summer, in fact, a cool winter. And it was so cool, in fact, that the bottles all froze, pushed the corks out or broke, and the hay went red, and the guy's face went red, and Oz wasn't best pleased, shall we say. So you don't want it anywhere that things are likely to freeze. You don't want it in the garage. The thing about a garage is that it can you go into the garage in winter and it can be below freezing. Go in there in summer and it can be baking hot. Indoors, Yeah, as I say, you've got this fireplace, that sort of thing. If you haven't got a fireplace, is there a cupboard somewhere where there's like a bottom shelf that doesn't that you could say you could slip a couple of cases in, and yeah, as in keep them in the boxes that you actually buy the wine from the wine merchant, because they've been most of the time they've been designed for transport, so they're reasonably sturdy. Just keep checking on them every now and then, because sometimes if it's a slightly damp atmosphere, the cases can start to disintegrate. But if you shove them in there, seal them up so there's no light getting in. You don't want light to get in. I don't know if you've seen some of those shops where they've got arrays of bottles in the window. If you compare the colour of the wine in a bottle where one of those has been in the window for 2 months with a regular bottle, you can see that there's a big difference, and the wine in the window has in effect almost like cooked. It won't be as fresh, it won't be as lively and vibrant as it should be. So keep them away from light. And I mean, you could adapt to get a load of bubble wrap and get some suitcases and shove them under your bed. Loads of things. You want insulation to stop both vibration and because wine again, you don't want it shaking around, and it also might break the bottles. Yeah, it'll keep the temperature a bit more constant as well. Keep the light out. But improvise. I mean, and don't start off sort of like keeping loads and loads of wine. Keep them for like 6 months, and if you prefer them, great. If you don't prefer them, well, drink them. Learn from experience. But there will be a few bottles that you think, okay, this is something that is worth keeping for 5, 10, maybe even more years. So those are the ones that you have to be careful with. And I'm sure I've probably raised more questions than I've answered here, so if you haven't got any, come back to this, shove them on the comments below, and I'll get through them. See you soon.